Hey, welcome to the show. Today I'm going to give a recap of the Quantum Summit that I just got back from on Monday. And it was quite a weekend. It was packed with stuff. So I'll kind of break down basically my experience there. And I have no doubt, because it was such a cool experience, that if every single person who went made a video, they would probably be quite different. Because that's kind of one of the neat things about something like this is I think that whatever each individual needed to experience or was maybe called to experience was kind of part of their destiny in some capacity. This conference is the kind of thing that kind of gave you exactly what you needed. So we'll get a little background on this. So this was a conference is a label that you could use. It was more like a party or an event. You know, I've been to a lot of like work conferences or industry conferences kind of in my corporate career, and this was nothing like that. XRP Las Vegas isn't like that either. While you do have some kind of formal structure and that people are presenting, it's all stuff that's interesting and people are, engrossed in what the discussions are about. So, and what's cool for me is that I've been to a bunch of these kind of XRP related events in the last like 2 years, and they seem to just keep getting better and better. And I think part of that has to do with the way I kind of approach them with this just level of excitement. And I've gotten to know quite a few people who are regular at these events. So I'm seeing my friends, I'm having fun times with my friends, and it's really more of a social and I don't even like the word networking because that sounds very transactional. It's kind of just a community connection, friendship type thing. So nobody asked me that about this event, but like with the last XRP event, which was back in May, only like a couple of weeks ago, it feels like a long time ago. People were like, what are you celebrating if the price of XRP is still like 50 cents or whatever? And this one, again, there was a lot of celebrating. The tone was very high vibe and excited. People were really happy to be there and to, a lot of times we have these relationships with people kind of through Zoom or on Twitter, or, online in some capacity. And to be able to see people and hang out with them in person is just amazing. And it's wonderful, especially when everybody's in a great mood and like every worry and concern seems to get left at the door and people are just there to enjoy themselves and enjoy each other's company. So a little background on kind of my involvement with this. So Mel Carmine put this on. I've known Mel for several years. Mel's a good guy. I want to talk about him a couple times in this video. My own personal awakening journey has changed a lot since I first met Mel and the first sort of interview video I did with him ages ago. So he decided to put this on, and it was pretty bold. He invited a lot of people. It was crossing or bringing together two kind of different types of communities. And I wasn't sure how that was going to go. It went great, by the way. And so Mel asked me to be a speaker. And then he asked me if I would be the MC, like the master of ceremonies for the events. And I said yes. So, and as we were kind of going through the planning, it was just really Mel and his wife, Amber, who's wonderful, doing a lot of the work. And so I offered to help with some of it because as the MC, I was kind of managing the flow from different speakers and panels and presenters. And so I offered to help with creating the schedule. That was an amusing and entertaining experience. There was many times where that felt like herding cats. And I felt like the Matrix was testing me a bunch of times with the schedule to see if it could get me to be frazzled and stressed. And I just didn't take the bait. And so even with a lot of sort of uncertainty with the schedule stuff, it was still really fun. So I was involved in a lot of the planning. So I think my role in this was quite different than many of the other people who went to this event. And the planning was great. So I got to know a little bit more about some of the people who I didn't know. That makes sense. So this brought together two worlds, as I said a second ago. There was a big group from the like XRP digital asset world, people that I now know quite well, good friends of mine, and many of them were presenters, and we all kind of hung out. And then there was this other side, which was more like the truther spiritual world, which is, if you've watched any of my videos or know me at all, it has been a bigger area of interest for me personally in the last year than some of the financial stuff. So this conference was like right up my alley. It had like all the digital asset stuff, the XRP stuff, the thesis about world reserve currencies, and, changing to the plumbing of the financial system. And then we had this whole like very esoteric timelines, galactic federation, remote viewing, the fall of the cabal, that whole side of things. And what was really interesting, and I actually said, so I did the opening remarks. I'll talk about that in a second. But so I very early on in the event shared that one of the things I was so excited about for this event was nothing was off limits in terms of content, what you could talk about. And that's not usually the case with industry events. Usually, especially if you have corporate sponsors or there's kind of this like corporate-y angle, you have to kind of cave to what the matrix wants. And you can't be sitting there talking about, Saint Germain and the Ascended Masters guiding us through the Galactic Federation stuff. So this was wild in that a wide variety of topics were covered, all like next to each other in sort of the same group, which just made them all feel like they're very tied together. So I love that I got to be a very active participant covering this wide variety of financial and esoteric topics, which actually in my worldview, they're really the same thing. They're two sides of the same coin. So let's see. Okay, so I actually made a week of this trip, and I went to St. Augustine, Florida for a couple of days before. And I wasn't really sure why I was doing that other than the fact that I drove. It's kind of a long drive, and I thought maybe I'll break up the drive a little bit. But what it kind of did was it made this whole experience longer, which made it feel more transformative. And when I left where I live before, I was very clear when I walked out that door, I knew that I was going to come back kind of a different person. I was going to be gone a whole week, and I knew a whole lot of things were going to happen. I was going to see a whole lot of people and have a lot of experiences. And I just knew in advance that it was going to change me in quite a profound way. And it certainly did. So I went to St. Augustine, had a wonderful time. It's a really gorgeous city, by the way, if you've never been there. It's the oldest city. And it has this very kind of colonial Spanish architecture feel, which is really wonderful. So then after that, I head down to Cape Canaveral. And the night before, Ray Fuentes and a couple of other people had rented an Airbnb and had us over. We did some interviews. Jimmy and I did an interview. Patrick did an interview. Rob Cunningham. Like there's a whole bunch of people. Versan did an interview. And that was kind of nice to get to hang with everybody. But it was sort of the calm before the storm in a beautiful way. Went to bed, got up early. The event starts, and it was packed. And there was a lot of uncertainty because this event didn't really have a lot of marketing budget. And Mel doesn't have like the size of a channel like that Brad Kimes has that he can use to help kind of create excitement and sell tickets and get people to go. So I wasn't really sure, to be honest, how many people were going to come. And it was wonderful and really validating for Mel that it was packed. And it wasn't in a fancy place. And it wasn't like this high budget production thing. But you know what? Like nobody really cared. People were there to connect with each other. They were there to hear these presenters. Quite a few presenters who are well known in their lane came, and it's always exciting to get to meet some of those people in person. So the event starts. Mel and I kind of open it up, and actually my partner Jimmy Valley was the keynote speaker, kind of introduced everybody to the event and kind of set the tone for the next 2 days. He did an amazing job, and it was a really kind of wonderful sort of leadership type remarks that really set the tone that this is going to be a high vibration event. We're on the cusp of a new world. Things are going to change, and we can be very excited about that. And I really did feel like all the speakers that followed kind of kept that high vibration vibe that Jimmy said, which was pretty cool. And then we had a mix of like panels and single presenters, a lot of stuff about digital assets and XRP stuff, things that you would, if you've been watching my stuff or you watch DAI or Brad or go to XRP Vegas, there will probably be things that are fairly familiar to you. There wasn't a ton of earth-shattering stuff because the thesis that many of us believe is still in play. And the things that we have made videos about and talked about in terms of changes in the financial system, like they are happening and they are evolving, and Ripple is now kind of emerging in this leadership way after winning a lawsuit and launching a stable coin. And even at consensus, like Ripple was a pretty big presence there. So it seems like the tide has shifted and we're getting much, much closer to sort of the Ripple thesis materializing in this world. And then we had some other incredible speakers that really covered like nutrition and food. Because, one of the things about the sort of cabal, there's a lot of ways you can look at this sort of 3D world that we live in and all the sort of fear-based manipulation tactics and lies and whatever that we have survived under until now. And, they've messed with the education system, they've messed with the money thing, and they've also messed with the food supply. And a lot of us have been fed like toxic food for our whole lives, and a lot of this, packaged garbage that people eat. And so we had some people there that were covering kind of the health and wellness side to say, what, part of being a sovereign individual is taking responsibility for your own health and owning what you eat and what you drink, and not just sort of caving and eating this crap that the elites have been feeding us without really understanding that is your choice to do. And so both Ian and Jim Gale were great about talking around some of the nutritional choices that we have. So this was Saturday. It went on pretty long. It's funny, I moderated a bunch of panels. I introduced a bunch of speakers. So it was a very busy day for me to manage like just the logistics of it. And I know that some people were on panels for the first time in their life, I guess, and told me that they were kind of nervous being up there and they had some stage fright and asking me if I had that. And I will tell you, I didn't, because one way to not be nervous is to just have so many other things you're preoccupied with, like the schedule and is the next speaker there, that like the idea of being worried about the crowd was like, I didn't have any capacity to worry about that. So I didn't, which is good. So that ended the first day. So Jimmy and I had a dinner for what we call the Friends of Valhill tribe at a restaurant a couple minutes from the place. And that actually originally just started because some of our friends who've been very supportive over the years that we hadn't met in person were going to be in Cape Canaveral for the weekend. Initially, it was just like 4 other people that we knew. And we're like, hey, what if we just kind of took them out to dinner as a thank you for their kind of unwavering support of everything that we've been doing. If you've been around me for a while, you know that last summer when we put out that valuation paper and I've talked about things related to the buyback, and people who have supported us have taken a lot of heat at times for doing that. And I understand what the consequences are when you get attacked for defending someone else. And we just wanted to thank some individuals for being so awesomely in our corner all the time. But then as things evolved, it was like more people were coming. They weren't necessarily a part of that thing, but we're like, you know what, they're our friends, let's come. So we ended up inviting quite a few more people, and it was like a full-blown party. I think probably about 30 people there, I guess. I didn't really keep count. And it was really fun. It did not feel like work. It did not feel like a work dinner. It was a party where we just had a bunch of people there who are really kind and loving and encouraging, there to celebrate and have a couple drinks and eat some food with us. And so if you came to that event, thank you very much. I had a wonderful time. It was probably one of the absolute highlights of the weekend. And it made me even more appreciative for all the Friends of Valhill, because by letting us thank you, you kind of gave me more to be grateful for. So that was very cool and fun. Ended up kind of hanging out so anytime Patrick Riley's around, I just call everyone who's with him just Reaper crew. He knows that, I've told him that. So the Reaper crew was around, they were in town, so went and hung out at their Airbnb as well. Had quite a cool hangout there right on the beach. And there's something amazing about the Atlantic Ocean that just has this pull of the waves. And I lived in the woods for a long time and don't go to the ocean a whole lot. And there's something remarkable about being on the ocean at night with stars and not a lot of clouds. Just feels this very huge, expansive presence. And that was a pretty amazing way to end night number. I guess this was night number 2. So then we start over Sunday, the last day of the event. Similar thing, I've been up kind of late enjoying the beach. But I had to get there pretty early. And it was another set of really incredible speakers talking about the second day was more of the topics around health, nutrition, and some of the more esoteric topics. Michael Jaco was there, and I was blessed to be able to moderate a panel with him and Carrie Cassidy. And we got into some really cool topics like remote viewing and how that works and how they got into it. And, the CIA has publicly come out recently that they use remote viewing as a tactic or a strategy. So it's not this like woo-woo way out there thing. I mean, Michael Jacobs was in the CIA and the military. These are methods that they use in warfare and in combat. And so to have these kind of very matter-of-fact conversations, like sitting right next to Michael Jaco, asking him like, so what was it like the first time you remote viewed? How did you know that it was a thing and not just your imagination? So on a personal level, I got to have some pretty amazing experiences moderating some of the panels with some pretty incredible people. And I do want to, so I'm going to go back to the whole herding cats thing. The schedule was very fluid because a lot, nobody was really based in Cape Canaveral other than Mel and maybe a couple of other people. So lots of people were traveling in, and sometimes people got other stuff going on and they can't make it. So it wasn't really clear if everybody that we thought was going to be there was going to be there. And then fortunately, there was several people who arrived as last minute speakers who had to be kind of worked in. And if you ever plan an event and had a schedule where you're actively doing things like I'd be up there moderating a panel under the assumption that the next whatever was all set. And while I'm up there, a speaker didn't show up or a new speaker was added. So the schedule was revised in several instances, like a minute or two before it actually started. And fortunately, I think we pulled it off and nobody seemed to really know. And one friend of mine, Rob Cunningham, I just want to give a big thank you to him. One of the panels that was later in the afternoon was just going to be him and Jan Halper Hayes, and was all set to do that. And then it kind of evolved that I was going to moderate and interview them and just kind of ask them questions to keep things flowing. And then a new guest arrived, and the guest's son also had to come, which meant there was no room for me on the stage. And so I asked Rob Cunningham, like about 30 seconds before the panel started, that he was no longer going to be interviewed. And I asked him if he would moderate with no preparation and no idea what we were even going to talk about, because I didn't really know who this new man and his son, like what their area of specialty was. But he just was like, no problem. And he did it and he rocked it like a pro. So Rob, thank you very much for being so flexible. And a lot of like those types of things happened where it seemed like something was going to be messy, but it just worked out. And whoever kind of needed to step up and help out at that moment just did. And it was no worries at all. And Mel Carmine was fantastic in that same instance, is that one of the guys in this new panel is in a wheelchair, which I did not know because I didn't know he was coming and I didn't know who he was. And I didn't know his son presents with him as well. So all good. I just, as the planner of the schedule, just didn't know that. And so about 30 seconds before I talked to Rob, I was told that this man was in a wheelchair, and the stage was like a built stage where you walked up a couple of stairs, and this woman who was kind of helping me figure out, we're like, well, how are we going to get him up there? Like, and I kind of started to get nervous. I told you I was being tested a bunch to see if I could get frazzled, and I went and got Mel, who was like, well, just pick him up. Like, why are you making a big deal out of it? And sure enough, we got a couple guys, picked him up, picked the man up in the whole wheelchair up, moved a chair out, made a spot for him, and boom, it was done. So those are the types of things where the fluidity of this schedule, it almost felt like divine guidance, in that every time I kind of was tested to see if it was going to frazzle me, it all just worked out, and the right people just stepped up in a pretty nonchalant and cool manner. So I guess most people are not going to have this view of the event from that direction, but I was just consistently reminded that, everything just works out and you don't need to be stressed, and enjoy this event because there's all these wonderful people here who have interesting things to say, many of whom wanted to thank you. They watched videos I've made and whatnot. And it was a lot of really kind of appreciative gratitude type energy for this event. And that was day 2. At the end of Sunday, we went back to the same place where we had the Val Hill dinner, coincidentally. Very cool bar called Rising Tide, by the way. If you are ever in the Cape Canaveral area, it is a very fun place to hang out. Very kind of lots of light and fresh air, and kind of a beachy vibe, even though it's not really it's right near where all the cruise ships leave from in Cape Canaveral. And then we had another fun night there, and then kind of hung out at the Reaper Group place again, had a big party there that night. And it was incredible to also see how all of the attendees there were so appreciative to Mel. So Mel Carmine, if you know, I'm like, he has been in the space for a while, and he's very polarizing. Like, people are either love him or they like have a very difficult reaction to him, right? And that's tough to be in a position of that. And even like me as a speaker, and then Jimmy had this as well, like we took some heat from people who didn't think that we should go to this event. And actually, the minute you ever do that kind of thing to me, it's going to make me want to go more, because I don't really like people telling me what to do. However, I did understand that the criticism to me wasn't really from a place of like negativity. It was more of concern. However, I very much trusted my intuition and my gut on this, and got to spend a lot of time with Mel and with his wife, Amber, and they're just really wonderful people. They put a lot of work into this event. And I think until you've kind of gone through something like this, I mean, I know Brad Kimes can probably appreciate this. It's a tremendous amount of work to handle all the logistics on that. And I was really glad for Mel to get to feel all of that appreciation from the people who not only were speakers and presenters there, but from the attendees as well. Like, it was wonderful. It really was a cool thing. And I love that, like, there's a lot of these types of events. So like Brad puts one on, now Mel puts one on. I think if more people kind of step up and want to throw these events where people in communities can get together and connect and have fun, I think the more people that do that, the better. I'm tempted to do it, although now I've been planning for these other events that I'm not fully responsible for. So I kind of feel like my role is really to help do exactly what I did this weekend. So I'll probably do that again in some capacity in some other event. In terms of the topics and stuff that we covered, the one that blew my mind the most was Ishmael Perez, who I knew of, but didn't really know much about him. And for the last, I think, year, and definitely the last 6 months, I have been studying a lot more spiritual, esoteric, even kind of mythological information about, what is the history of the earth? What is this ascension process, this ascension journey that we're on? What is it really all about? What are all these different dimensions? Like, is there this thing called the Galactic Federation? If you've been in kind of the red pill truther community, we talk about these white hats and, who are they really? And he covered that in a lot of great detail. And a lot of things on a personal level that I had read about from all these different sources, like Ishmael Perez, like brought them all together. And if you listen to him speak, he speaks very matter-of-factly, like he's, teaching you a 9th grade algebra lesson. Like, there was no concern in his voice that people aren't going to believe what he's saying, if that makes sense. When I've talked about some of these more out there topics, I often, like, my ego is sitting here on the side being like, what are you doing? These people are gonna think you're crazy. Like, why do you talk about this stuff? Like, it's sort of trying to get me to not cover a lot of these things. And he had none of that apprehension that I sometimes have, which to me was amazing, because if he has zero doubt about this, and this is what he talks about, it kind of validated or confirmed many of these things that I have learned as well, but just wasn't sure, because it sounds so different than what we have been taught as humans growing up in the Matrix about whether Earth is the only civilization and whether or not we are connected in a spiritual way to entities outside of sort of this Matrix Earth world. So, and he was the last presenter on the last day. So it was the perfect way for me to kind of end it on this, like, wow, and holy smokes type of note. And so I definitely plan to watch more of his stuff. So I think the event was wonderful. I basically had a 2.5-day, 3-night party. I really got to spend some time with some really wonderful people. And some of it was people I just kind of met, and they want to talk, we talk about more like XRP or financial system stuff, more informational stuff. But I got to have a whole lot of time with people where we were just hanging out like as friends and just chilling. And that was amazing to get to spend in-person time with people that you often just, hang out in a Telegram group or in a Twitter thing or whatever. To see people in real life, I just love it. It really creates this much tighter bond than you would have, that I think you can have with a purely kind of online relationship alone. I've also been a student of energy and vibrations a lot in the last year, definitely the last 6 months. And I now can kind of detect and feel what the vibration is at particular places. And even in conversations that I'm having with somebody, I can kind of read, like, where are we energetically here? I think many people can do this. I'm in, maybe subconsciously, I'm now doing it more like actively. And the vibration of this event was very high. And there was a lot of excitement and optimism. And people were just really happy to be there and to be able to meet with each other in person. And so if you get the opportunity to go to these types of events, I know I said this in the video I made about XRP Las Vegas, but it's still true. Like, if you have something you're passionate about and there's other people that are passionate about it, and you have the opportunity to go to an event where they are, like, you should go. It's amazing to be able to connect with people who are thinking about the same things that you're thinking about, talking about the same things you want to talk about. And, if you're not quite sure, like, how this all fits together, those are the people who will want to sit down with you for hours and figure it all out and talk about it. One of the kind of strange things about this era that we're in, where we are like awakening to these truths and kind of finding out that things are not what we thought they were, is that can sometimes feel like a lonely road, because for whatever reason, in many cases, and certainly in my own, the people that were around me, like my friends and family, like when I was awakening, like, weren't going through that with me. And as I kind of rose up in my awakening process, I felt a lot of resistance and criticism from people around me who were like telling me that I was wrong, I was making it up, I was being delusional, that, things that I was being played in some cases. And that was that can be disturbing, because you're like, are they right? Am I right? Like, what's truth here? What's really going on? And so we have the internet now, which is amazing and has allowed us to find people with those shared interests, which can help overcome this cognitive dissonance and this ego influence that constantly wants us to stay small in the matrix, doing what you're told, go get your little corporate job and sit in your cubicle and pay your taxes and watch TV and eat lots of junk food and, be a good little complier. And so all the resistance that I have to not doing that, like, it's a push and pull. And so when I can connect with people who are aligned with me and saying, no, we're not going to play this matrix game anymore. I'm opting out. I'm done with it. I'm rising above it. I've often needed other people to kind of help pull me along on that journey. And for any of you watching this who can also question, like, is it worth it to know all of this awake stuff if the people all around me don't want to be awake and they don't care, and they're telling me that this information is dangerous, it's misinformation, or whatever people like to call conspiracy theories? It can create a lot of inner conflict when the people around you are not on that same path with you. And so when you can go to these events and connect with people who are vibrationally where you are and in the same place of kind of learning and understanding, or relatively the same place, it can really help kind of calm this inner conflict about what should I do as part of this ascension awakening process. So it was a really long paragraph, whatever, to say, if you have the opportunity to go to events where there are people who are interested in the stuff you're interested in, you should go. Now, this particular event, like, was right up my alley. So it really would have made no sense for me not to go to it, because all of the topics that were covered are things that I am absolutely interested in. And it's also amazing too, because a couple of years ago, to have had this kind of event, it would have taken, I think, a lot more criticism than it did. And now it didn't really seem like it was that of an out there woo-woo event to have a conversation where the last presenter talked about the different sort of councils of the Galactic Federation in a very matter-of-fact PowerPoint presentation on a stage. I mean, I just love that that happened, and that was amazing to experience. So yeah, so it was a good event. Mel wants to do more of them. I think he should. I have no idea when the next one will be, or how that works. So we'll have to sort of stay tuned and see how that evolves and unfolds. But I am grateful for this weekend. If I spent some time with you and hung out with you, I thank you for that. I had such a fun time, and really, because it was 2 full days and 3 nights. Like, that's a chunk of time. So I really did get to connect with quite a few people and in a wonderful way. And if you came to the Val Hill dinner, thank you very much. That means a lot to me. And I know it means a lot to Jimmy. We've had all this support from people over the last couple of years, especially in times where it's not always that easy to kind of support the stuff that we've been involved in. So thank you for that. All right, that's my recap. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.
Welcome to CarminesGold.com. Don't waste not even a second looking. Cheaper prices just don't exist. How important is it for you to own gold and silver right now? What does it mean to me personally? There's an economy that's about to crash beyond what words can explain. In 5 words, I'm going to educate you on gold and silver. Are you ready? You need to own some. Simple. Time is of the essence as the walls are closing in. This crash is visibly in motion right now. Don't kid yourself. The only way to preserve wealth is to become your own central bank. Just by owning gold and silver, the banks that are going into survival mode are currently stacking gold and silver like it's going out of style. You have the same opportunity instead of keeping your money in paper, which is worthless. Again, this is not financial advice. Going into survival mode is everything. Preserving your wealth and positioning your family to thrive in the near future is paramount. The time to take action is beyond crucial. God's money cannot be faked. It's got intrinsic value. It's got plenty of usability. And because the crypto game could be extremely complicated for most, this becomes the only way to preserve your wealth in the current times we live in. The price manipulation that has occurred over the last 150 years is about to come to a full stop as we move into an extremely different world. And the true value of gold and silver is going to shine like never before. The people who vividly see what's happening have moved into panic buying right now. The people who get it, who are positioned for wealth preservation, who are accumulating every week, every month, stand to change their course of history for 100 generations to come. Buying gold and silver from CarminesGold.com at unbeatable prices is the best decision you'll ever make. I'm going to end by saying this. This is my opinion and not financial advice. This crash is knocking on the door, and it's clear. It's here. We can fill any size order, $500, $500,000, and yes, even $10 million. Your best option to preserve wealth, if you don't understand cryptocurrency, is gold and silver. Do it now.